All right, everybody. So we're going to get started, and people can join us as they're available. So good evening, everyone. Thank you for attending the public forum on the Main and Walden Street intersection, which is being funded through the Shared Streets and Spaces grant program through Mass DOT. So this program is meant to provide quick implementation for projects which will help with safe pedestrian areas, public health, economic development, and much, much more. The focus last year was on speed management, which is why we submitted for the Main and Walden Street intersection, as I'm sure you all have been through there and noticed that speed can certainly be an issue. The plan for the public forum tonight is to go through the basic ideas and plans as they stand right now, and to then allow for questions and comments. There is a survey that is available online on the project website, which allows for the submission of comments if you would like to submit anything else after the forum is over. If you go over and take a look at the intersection, have additional thoughts, if you come to the site walk tomorrow and have additional thoughts, please feel free to let us know through that form. On that note, a site walk will be held tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. at the intersection, and we invite you all to come and see the area in person. We will have coned off the proposed bump outs, so you can sort of get a better feel for it in person for what it's actually going to look like and feel like to be in the space. So before we dive right into the presentation, I just want to introduce who we have tonight here from the project team. My name is Erin Stevens. I'm the Senior Planner for Transportation and Mobility. We also have from Concord's Public Works Engineering team, Steve Dukran and Joe Cormier. And we have John Vancourt and Brandon Lambert from HSI, the engineering firm that we've been working with on this project. Ron Holsinger, the safety officer from the police department, I don't believe is with us, but he will be there tomorrow for any additional questions that may come up. And with that, I'll dive right in. Hold on one second. All right, can everyone see that all right? All right. I hope so. Okay, perfect. Thank you. All right, so we're going to dive right in. I already went through a little bit of this. So like I already said, this project was through the Shared Streets and Spaces grant program. Last year, their focus was on speed management. We received about $200,000 for our proposed project, which has changed slightly, mainly based on community feedback that we have received. And we think that it's made an even better and stronger proposal for this intersection. So taking us right back to our heyday, back in the 1800s, if you look at Main Street, where it meets with Walden, you can see that we have a tree-lined avenue, and you can see people walking around on there. And that's kind of the feel of what we're partially trying to get back to, just a little bit. And here's another view. So here's the intersection as it is today. And here is what we are proposing and what we are thinking of. So this is an initial design that was done previously, but it gives sort of a really nice idea, I think, for when you're first thinking about this project. So what you see here are what we're proposing is the bump outs. It will happen on these 4 different spots where the crosswalks meet the sidewalk. And it will allow for a clear view, both for the pedestrian and for vehicles coming through the intersection, to see before they're actually in the roadway. So when a pedestrian is looking, and you'll see in a couple of different slides what that view will look like, it will give you a much clearer view down the street, so you can see if a vehicle is coming without actually standing in the street in order to be able to see that. Vehicles similarly will be able to see a pedestrian before they're actually in the roadway. We think this is going to be a huge help to really help people feel more confident walking through this area and make it much more walkable. It will help vehicles feel more confident also going through this area, especially with the inclusion of having the striping through the center, which will help to better align people going through the intersection. If you stand there and watch today, as we've done in the past couple of weeks, people that are unfamiliar with the intersection will be coming down Main Street and will end up halfway into the left turn lane before realizing they need to readjust. This will help to guide them. Some additional things that we were thinking about doing is removing this one parking space in front of what is now Footstock. What this will do is it will create more of like a pedestrian plaza sort of feel and make it much more aesthetic. It will make it much more walkable, and it will provide a sort of safe haven for people, if you will, when they're walking down the street. What we're looking to do also is plant a few street trees that call back to that 1800s photos that I showed you before. And we are hoping that this will provide both a speed management technique by slowing down vehicles, as the road will be visibly squeezed, but will not be actually changing in terms of the road width. So it will be a visible change, as well as the street pattern will signal to people that there is something different about this area and about this intersection, and to pay closer attention. Here's another look at it. I can zoom in a little bit so you can see that even better. That just provides you with a different rendering of the same intersection there. This is actually a newer version in which we have, because of the grade of the road from coming down from Walden towards where Footstock is, this slope is quite great. And in order for us to make it so that there's enough of a difference between the sidewalk and the intersection, we have added in a sort of a large curb, or we've talked about sort of a granite block or something of that nature to provide that differentiation between the intersection and the pedestrian area of the sidewalk. So as I spoke about before, this is showing you just what those bump outs will do. So on the left is the current view. When I took the photo, I was standing just outside of the sidewalk, and I was actually in the crosswalk. And you can see it's kind of difficult to see right past that car there. On the right is where you will be standing when you're at the edge of the sidewalk with the bump out. And you can see much further down the road, the vehicles can see you, and you're going to feel hopefully much safer when crossing this intersection. So here's a few different views just to sort of show what those bump outs can really do to help provide those safe sight lines. And then we have a couple of sort of rough mock-ups that I did just to sort of provide you with a visualization. I know that this helps me a lot. I'm somebody who really is a visual learner, and so I put these together to help myself and found that other people enjoyed them as well. So this just gives you an idea of what the intersection could look like. So for pavement options, we've been going back and forth and looked at a few different options. The one on the left is a stamped concrete. It is long lasting, and I have spoken to a couple of different people who have used it and really liked it. It does take a long time to cure though. So that is one thing that is difficult, especially in such a busy intersection. On the right is a polymer cement blend, which they've actually been using up in Ipswich, and they are really pleased with it. So this is something that goes on top of asphalt and is really fairly low maintenance as far as plowing and any issues with patching and things like that. It can actually be done fairly easily, and it cures very quickly. So one of the things that we were also looking at is possibly doing the crosswalks and the actual middle of the intersection in different patterns. On the left is the brick pattern, and on the right is the cobblestone pattern. We like that the red brick will sort of jump out jump off the street at you, and really sort of highlight where the crosswalks are. And one of the things that we really liked about this material as well is that it is not only ADA accessible, but it is also slip resistant. They add a sort of sand into it so that it makes it so that it's not as slippery as real stone might be, depending on the type of stone. I do also want to note that we can sort of choose what color we want. They can use Pantone colors. So if, for instance, we wanted something that was exactly this color or a little bit darker, a little bit lighter, we can choose exactly what color we'd like to see. And some of the companies that I've talked to have said that they can make it happen, which is great. Additionally, we've been looking at different types of patterns and things like that. And the cobblestone that you see here, which was up in Ipswich that I saw, is a little bit more uniform than we think that we would like. And we'd probably be looking at something more like the cobble brick, which is on the bottom there. And this is just showing you what those look like in context. These are two different historic districts in Ipswich, which I was just talking about, and also in Salem. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing. And I'm going to ask if anybody from Public Works or from HSI have anything that they want to add before we start taking any questions.
I think you covered it well.
Yeah, I think it was well said.
Perfect. That's what I like to hear. Great. All right. So we have a hand up from Ara.
I unmuted. You wanted name and address, right? Like regular town. Okay.
Yes,
I'm at 501 Powder Mill Road, and I want to thank you. Your presentation made it a lot clearer than when I studied the website. But when I studied the website, it looked to me like you were going to forbid a left-hand turn for somebody traveling west on Main to turn on to Walden. But now I think that was mistaken, and we'll still be able to turn left. But there'll be, I hope, signage so that people who are in the left lane don't try to do a merge into the single lane. I mean, for somebody who's traveling by vehicle for the first time through the intersection, I think the signage has to be a lot clearer than it is now. That would be my guess.
So we'll still have pavement markings. Those may not be showing in the renderings that we have, but there will be pavement markings, and you can certainly still turn left there. We're not taking away any left turns.
Thanks.
Do we have any other questions or comments? Mary?
Hi, Erin. Thank you. My name is Mary Hartman. I live at 16 Concord Green. I'm a member of the select board, but I'm speaking for myself. First of all, I think this is great. I think it's a good combination of something that's safer and nicer looking. It's going to be great for that area. I have a question about the timeline. Will the completion of this be done in time for the 250th celebration?
Yes. So the funds for this are actually supposed to be used up by next December. So we will hopefully have it done by then. We will definitely have it done in time for 250 though.
Great, thank you.
Absolutely. Stefan?
Thank you, Erin. Very nice presentation. I noticed one change from an earlier version had moved the trees over to in front of Woodstock, in front of Footstock, instead of on the opposite corner. And I think that's a great improvement because those opposite corners are smaller to start with. And also, particularly the northern one, there are issues with ice coming off their roof in the winter. So that would not be a good place to try to squeeze in a tree and have people walk around it. That said, I'm wondering, there looks like there's room for maybe a bench between those two trees. Are there thoughts of putting a bench there as we have in some of the other pocket parks in the Thorough Depot and West Concord areas? That's question one. And question two is there any grade difference in the pavement? Is there any kind of a speed bump, hump, or elevation change, or is this all essentially flat with regular pavement and the other side of the regular pavement resumes?
Sure. So in terms of the bench, right now we're leaving the space open so that we don't know how the space is going to be used. It could be that we've heard from people that they're interested in putting in a bike rack. We've heard from people that they're interested in having there be benches there. We sort of want to see how the space functions and how it really feels before we commit to anything. It could be that the piece of granite that we put there could feel bench-like in the meantime. It depends on what we end up going with as our final design. But we have not ruled in or out any additional features right now, but it's definitely something that is in consideration. And when you're saying the grade, you're meaning is the intersection going to be raised or have any speed bumps or anything like that?
Yeah, that's what is it like a speed table so-called, or is it just stamping the pavement?
It's just stamping the pavements. And someone can jump in if I'm explaining this poorly, but essentially because of the grade of the intersection, it would be almost as if we have a foot table on one side and 3 inches on the other. Because of the grade of the intersection, it is extreme, and it makes it very difficult to have something like that there. It may be able to be done, but I don't think it would be something that would be very worthwhile in the space that we have.
I would not be in favor of that. Just, I think the traffic through there slows down for pedestrians for the most part. But I think adding a speed bump would not slow it down anymore. It would just make it more difficult for public works when they're removing snow and stuff like that.
Great. Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you.
Joan.
Hi, Joan Ferguson, 62 Neshoba Road. I had a couple of, I'll just say all my questions at once. So the earlier design showed that the intersection, possibly showed that the intersection was being filled in with a different paving material, but it looks like the one you showed, it wasn't. It would just be the crosswalks, which I think is better. And my other question is, has the Historical Commission weighed in on the paving material? Because I know you want to draw attention to the crosswalks, but at the same time, when I look at the street, having brightly paved crosswalks detracts from the historical character in any event. And I think the improvements you make, the simpler, the better, for the very same reason that, you want to enjoy the historical landscape in the storefronts and not be distracted by what's going on in the roadway itself. Something I've always noticed that's very difficult around town is every time you have the ramp going down at an intersection, not every time, but frequently that's where the puddles occur. So I know that that's difficult to get the drainage to work right there. And so I'm hoping that maybe as part of this, that you'll be able to mitigate that problem so that there's not a puddle every time you come off those ramps. And when you showed, I think, I thought those were very good photographs you showed about your sight lines existing and with the bump out on the north side of Main Street. But did you have some photos that went rather quickly? And I wondered if you could show and explain them again about what the impact would be with the bump outs on I guess it'd be the southwestern and the southeastern corners there, to see if that would, where that improvement would occur on those corners as well.
Sure. I think I got all the questions, so we'll see.
Okay.
See if I missed one. So I'll go first with see if I can read my own handwriting. Oh, the paving material in the middle. So we've been talking about two different options. One is to only do the crosswalks, and one is to do that sort of cobblestone look in the middle. So we've gotten different sort of opinions from different groups. I've been hearing more from people that they prefer having the cobble look in the middle. So that is sort of what we're leaning towards right now, depending on the cost. We'll see where we actually end up. But that is sort of where we're leaning right now. I have been working closely with the Historical Commission and with the Historic Districts Commission. We actually are we're leaning towards that one material because it does look more historic, especially when you're looking at a regular asphalt pavement versus something that's going to look more like brick or cobble, which would be more, what's actually accurate would be dirt road, but I don't think we want to go there. So we're looking to something that might look a little bit, that would look of the time and of Concord, while still being low maintenance and ADA accessible. I wrote enhance. Not quite sure what that one was. So for the drainage for the crosswalks, yes, we are looking at improving the stormwater and improving the drainage there. We are looking at, because it is such a difficult grade, especially when you're going towards where footstock is, it does sort of tend to puddle right there. So we're trying to make sure to the best of our ability that there won't be any additional puddling there. We could try to keep those clear of excess black ice and things like that, because we certainly don't want to have anything like that, or puddles during storm events or things like that. And the sight lines, I don't know if anybody wants to jump in while I go and find those photos to answer anything that I didn't already.
Hey, John or Brandon, do you have any information regarding the improvement of sight lines on the opposite corners?
In terms of the actual, you're looking for the actual linear feet of the improvement of the sightline, Steve, if that's what you're looking for. No, we haven't measured that. We can. It's significant. I think the pictures that Aaron's bringing up now demonstrate that, but
Okay, so this one is on Walden Street. This is looking towards Middlesex Bank and the library. This is looking that same direction. And then this is looking from where Footstock is down towards Monument Square. So I did not add in all of the different angles simply because I didn't know if anybody would want to look through all the different angles. But these were some of the more significant ones, I think, in terms of the improved sight lines. I think that all except for this one corner will not really be improved all that much. It will be slightly farther out. But the issue is that because of the turning radius that we need for trucks and for fire trucks, we have to have something that is less than we would ideally have here in order for people to really be able to see. However, because people will hopefully be slowing down due to the squeezed intersection here, people will be able to have, while not the same sight line, they will have an improved visual before there is a vehicle coming their way. And
yeah, can I didn't mean sightlines in the technical sense, but okay, so I was just, just interested in knowing what the benefits, for instance, if there are really no benefits in terms of the safety of being able to see the cars coming or the cars being able to see the pedestrian at that particular bump out, because it can't be a full bump out, but for the reasons you just stated, whether, just think whether we need it. So that was it. That was
sure.
Question. And just for the record, I would weigh in on not filling in the intersection even with cobbles, because that smacks of just, historically the roadway wouldn't have two different materials anyway. I mean, so why throw it in? Why throw it in? That's it.
Sure, thank you. So in terms of the sight lines here, so we, like I said, the sight lines for over here by Footstock will be improved. By what is now Graham's Nuts will certainly be improved. And over here on Walden, looking down Walden in this direction, will all be improved. The only one that won't really be changed is this one that is looking from this corner on Walden down towards Monument Square. I think that it's still very worthwhile because you will get that much improved sightline on Walden. And we certainly would not, scrap doing all of the bump outs just because this one wasn't necessarily improving. So I hope that answers your question. Christy, I see your hand up.
Yes, Christy Detweiler, 111 Partridge Lane. The drawing you just had up actually was the root of my question. It looks from that drawing as if the Walden crosswalk might impede traffic that's traveling toward Monument Square, because it looks like the crosswalk actually is out into the lane of traffic. Is that just the way that the drawing is rendered, or what I'm worried about is people traveling, on the what did you say, the westbound Main Street going toward Monument Square are possibly going to be impeded by pedestrians who are out in that crosswalk crossing Walden Street.
I'm sorry, I was trying to, so you're saying that you're concerned about people crossing here?
Yes, because if you look at where the line of the crosswalk is drawn, it looks like it's out into the lane of traffic on Main Street.
Do one of the engineers who pulled the drawings together, could you better answer that? I'm not sure if I.
Yeah, this is John Vancourt from Hayner Swanson. You're right. The way the crosswalks are drawn, that crosswalk is going out into the Main Street traffic lane. Just some really tight. It'd be if you're out tomorrow for the on-site visit, it might be a little easier to explain. We've got some very difficult grading in each one of the bump out in all three locations. We've got some very difficult grading, and in order to assure that we meet with the Americans with Disability Act, say the ADA requirements, we can only have that crosswalk coming out right in the corner. And because it's in the corner, we need to have both crosswalks come to it. And one of the things, it's often left out, but it's an important part of an ADA crosswalk, is to make sure that if there's a place where someone who's mobility challenged needs to make a turning movement, that they're able to turn in a flat area. And for us, the way we had to grade these out, the flat area is just beyond the ramp into the street. And so that's why we really have to have the crosswalks oriented like this to give people enough room to turn it once they come down the ramp and be safely within the crosswalk markings.
So that makes sense to me. I guess my concern is that Main Street traffic is going to have to stop anytime someone's in the Walden Street crosswalk, because it won't be safe to travel through that intersection. Someone could be out into the lane of traffic.
Well, so the other thing I'd point to is on the Main Street side, you can see the stop bar, the white bar, vertical in this picture. That's really the limit of the travel lane. So if you picture that width, that's the travel lane width. It's really only right at the ramp itself that a pedestrian in the crosswalk is actually in the travel route. If you carry that width through, can you follow what I mean by that?
Yeah, I understand. I think the pedestrians aren't always as careful about staying within their lines as they're crossing. They're, chatting and not necessarily paying as close attention to traffic. So it does, I see that it kind of intersects with that corner there, and hopefully they stay within the crosswalk, but it will be a little tricky for a car to feel like they can safely cross there as someone's in that crosswalk, and from my opinion.
Well, I think it's going to be limited how often the cars have to stop. If they're traveling slowly through the intersection, I don't know how much that's going to influence the capacity of the roadway, but overall, this really is a place, I think, it's not a bad thing if they drive past here slowly.
Yep, thank you. Understood.
Are there any other questions or comments? Oh, Stefan, I see your hand. I saw your actual hand.
Yeah, I was looking for the button. Thank you. Snow removal is, I guess that's one question. And the other question is, you talked about curing time and durability. Are you talking curing time, the difference between 2 days and 4 days? Or are you talking 2 days versus 2 months, or what? I've seen some of these stamped intersections, particularly in Davis Square and Somerville, which obviously has a lot more traffic, but I'd be probably more concerned about the long-term durability than the short-term curing issue. Just
Sure. So as far as curing time, so the way that we're thinking about doing this intersection, and please correct me if I'm wrong, Steve, but my understanding is that we're sort of planning on doing it half and half. So we'll do one travel lane and then the second travel lane. That way that during construction, vehicles will still be able to move through the intersection, no problem. We might have to detour traffic at some points, but business will be able to continue as usual. In terms of the curing time for that sort of top layer that we're talking about, that pavement treatment, the pavement treatments that we're looking at that are that polymer cement blend, they dry in like a matter of hours, not a matter of days. So they're very quick to dry. They do have to do multiple layers. So sometimes they come and do sort of the grout layer, if you will. And so they'll come and do that. And they may come back and do the second layer the next day, but it's a matter of hours before you can drive on it. So it could be that they come do it in the morning and then finish up in the afternoon. You can drive, during lunchtime and then again in the evening. So I think that it'll be really fairly quick. And I know that I was speaking to Public Works up in Ipswich, and they just put the material that I'm talking about down. And they said that they are loving it so much that they're actually pulling up some of their brick crosswalks to put this in instead, because it is holding up better than the bricks that they have. And it's in areas with brick and cobblestone in the same streets, and it looks great. Obviously you can tell the difference between the real cobblestone and the fake cobblestone, and the real brick and the fake brick. But overall, I think it looked really impressive. And snow removal. So one of the reasons that we've been looking at this material is because it is easy to plow. You don't have to worry about with things like rail, brick, and cobble. If you catch the edge of it, it can pull the whole stone up, and then you have to go and you have to replace it. And it can turn into a little bit of a mess. So this is all flat and, like I said, ADA accessible. So it doesn't have any edges that can really catch. So we don't have those same issues with plowing. I don't know if anybody else has anything to add on that.
I'll add something, Aaron, Steve Dukin, town engineer. Curing time, it all depends on what material we're using in the middle of the crosswalks. Say we're going to start in concrete, you can always add accelerants and to reduce the curing time. But if we're going to cobbles in a bed of mortar, and we'll have to do whatever is recommended for the curing time for the mortar before we put heavy traffic on it. So there are ways of dealing with it, but you're right, we probably don't want to do the whole intersection one shot and to shut down the intersection. With regards to plowing, we have spoken with the maintenance folks, and certainly no raised crosswalks. They don't want any bumps, but the bump outs, the curb bump outs, as long as we don't keep them too abrupt, and the plows can negotiate around those bump outs, we'll be fine.
Any additional questions or comments? I don't know if anybody from the team has anything that they want to add.
I'll add a few things, now that you haven't covered them yet. We're looking at improving these crosswalks simply because of safety and the amount of traffic you have there, the number of pedestrians. Sometimes they just don't go well together. And so reducing the length of the crosswalks, putting out the pedestrians where they can see the oncoming vehicles as well as the vehicles can see them will certainly add a great measure of improvement to safety. And we have other crosswalks in town that can use that kind of work. And, as funding becomes available, we intend to address those as well.
Well put, Steve. Thank you. Linda, I see your hand.
Yeah, thank you for this presentation. I just have a question about whether you've had a chance to meet with the Commission on Disability.
Yes.
And did you get some concrete feedback from them?
Yeah, I met with them early on, and they're excited about the prospect of having more accessible crosswalks and more visible crosswalks, especially being able to better see before actually being in the roadway, I think was huge. We also spoke about the importance of having crossings that were ADA accessible and not having something that would catch on the edge of a wheelchair or a walker or a stroller even. And I've also spoken to a couple of members separately from the commission who like the idea, and I think that we're on the right track here.
That's great. And then just a follow-up question to that. Can someone give me some idea of the size of the bump out in terms of a wheelchair that would be on it? In other words, how much additional room is available once a wheelchair is in the bump out?
So on the, this is John Vancor, on the side of, by Footstock, we made those, what we've detailed there, they're particularly wide. They're 8 feet wide. And part of that is because we want to have room on those. Again, the grading was tough. We wanted to have room for drainage, to have drainage within the path. So we made those 8 feet. The minimum width is 4 feet. Often you see them as 5 feet in common areas. And I think, Brandon, correct me if I'm wrong, I think on the other two bump outs, we've detailed them as 6 feet wide. Is that right? Or are they 5?
I believe we kept those at 8 also.
Oh, those
and
are
then
8 as
with
well.
5-foot landing area.
Okay.
So the ramp itself is 8 feet.
So they're all 8. So we really put a high level of design standard for these.
Thank you. That's helpful. Thank you.
Janet, I see your hand.
Sound. Sorry, the lighting's horrible. I'm sorry, I came very late to this, but if you have bump outs that pushes bicycle traffic into the road, and what can you do to address that problem? And especially sometimes a crosswalks, there's a bollard in the middle of the road, and there really isn't. It's really very, very narrow for a car to try passing you on that narrow space. So what consideration are you giving to bicyclists?
Sure. So I'll start and I'll have somebody else jump in if I'm missing something. We're not planning on having any of the ballards or anything in the street. The bump outs are only going to go as far as the parked cars are. So the shoulder will remain the same. So I won't actually be changing the width of the road at all. It'll just allow pedestrians to be able to better see, which will hopefully also help cyclists to not have to swerve around people or anything like that, or have to worry about seeing a pedestrian in the crosswalk, because they will be safely be able to see them, and they will be able to see them both ways, similar as a vehicle. So while there isn't room for having a designated bike lane, we're not changing the width of the shoulder, which is in some ways, the bike's path in a lot of different ways, which unfortunately, is not as nice as having a designated bike lane. But we're not taking anything away from the additional width that's there for the bicycles. And I don't know if somebody else wants to chime in there.
Aaron, I think you explained it better than I would have, so I'll leave it at that.
Yep.
Do we have any other questions or comments? We will also be tomorrow at the site walk. So you're welcome to, if you come up with something in the middle of the night, something pops into your head, you're welcome to bring it up tomorrow. Or like I said, there's a survey with a form to submit comments on our project website if you'd like to submit anything there. Any additional questions or comments? Anything else before we decide to close the meeting?
One quick question. This is Bob Treitman, Middle Street. How long do you plan to be there tomorrow morning? I know you're going to start it at 9. Do you have any idea of how long the session's going to go?
My assumption would be probably for about an hour.
Okay, I'll be a little bit late, but I'll make it within that hour. Thank you.
Okay, we'll look for you. Great. So if there's nothing else, just as a reminder, we will be there tomorrow morning from 9 to 10, I guess, and maybe a little bit later, depending on when people show up. But we will be at the intersection of Main and Walden. Thank you all for coming. This meeting was recorded, so you can always go back and look at the recording. There's also project information on the website. It is under Transportation and Mobility under Planning. Feel free to submit any questions or comments, and thank you all so much. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you.